Well, good afternoon as we're sitting here at LTV on this beautiful afternoon, February 21st, year 2023, here with the Hello Hello Show, continuing with the tradition of public access and the tradition of the Hello Hello Show that's been on the air for about 4 decades, marching hand in hand with the inception of this station back then with as the founder, no, I forgot the name of the founder.
I founded it.
Fraser,
Dougherty.
Fraser Dougherty and Francis Ann. Of course, we don't want to fail to mention that. But also, just you'll see the signs of this kind of level of dedication that took place back then on the behalf of these individuals and a small group of people that followed, and especially at the beginning. So you can see the results of it. Today we have Steve Romm with us. Steve, I can't believe that you're actually calling me and saying, should we do the show? It's like,
well, when you wake up in the middle of the night,
I'm afraid to ask you.
Twice in a week, and I see you on the show.
Yeah, no, besides that, but the thing, after I get over the shock that you actually did that,
and I showed up,
I'm going back to the normal state of mind, which is shocked.
You're shocked.
I cannot imagine 1 second being with you without me being shocked.
Well, I think your audience should get used to the fact that I'm going to be here permanently.
Yeah, that's that. And also, how weird can you get to watch my show 1 a.m.? I mean, you got to be completely weird to do that.
I woke up and I see you, and as I explained to you on the phone the other day.
You have to admit, you really love my shows, regardless whether I fall asleep or I'm happy active.
I turn off everything else that's great. I mean, they could have an interview with Putin. I turn that off. Wouldn't make any difference. I go, to hell with Putin. I got to watch Haim.
Yeah, that's it. But you know what? Now that I acquiring into the nature of change, what it really means, it's. I don't watch movies much, but lately I started watching some movies and all this, and suddenly I realized that I'm actually paying attention and noticing the artwork that's been in every room or any space. And I'm amazed how I'm drawn to it, and how by doing so I realize that everything that I see seems familiar. Great art, by the way. Some of it painfully simple, right, which I strive to go there and get there. And I realize, but I know good enough to.
Your work is not simple.
Yeah, I know, but enough. I know enough not to imagine too much that just because it's simple and it looks like straightforward, anyone can do it, including me, because that's not the case. Lately, I'm bringing together paintings on the behalf of pre-established poems. Now, you know how much I have to work on it to get rid of the cliche aspect of it that's hovering over it and just waiting to take over.
Right.
And once it takes over, it's really too late. You have to abandon that piece and come back to it like very late at night when the cliche-ness is not around or asleep.
And in the background of your mind, I'm watching.
Yes.
So there's a superior force making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do.
I prefer to remind myself the morning after, not while you were there, because forget about it. Like daggers, man.
So now you know that when you're on alone at 1 o'clock in the morning, there is at least one person out there watching, which is me. And I was watching the other night, second night, and I see you sitting here, and you're doing this. And I almost wanted to call up and say, Haim, wake up.
Wake up, yeah, like Fraser Dougherty used to tell me.
And then you started
But it wasn't that. It was, in this case, the pause that I took. If you think, when I know...
It's not easy.
You think, when my monologues take place, certain things that are not accurate because you come from wandering outside the frame and looking at me. But if once you will succeed to find yourself suddenly within, like together with me sitting at the same chair, and you realize, actually, it's painful, but it's
painful to me.
But it's intriguing because there's some kind of a twisted logic to it that belongs to the individual, and all you need to do is really be willing to engage with that individual, not with his mouth and the voice and the thing and the storytelling, just the person, and suddenly you realize you're part of the story. So I took a pause. I took a long pause because I really wanted. Sometimes I have such a hard time finding the right words.
Right. I noticed.
Yes, and I'm there, and I think even though it's freestyle completely, I still think that I owe some kind of level of coherence, so at least
Absolutely.
a direction.
There were two things I noticed. One, I mean, as I mentioned to you the other day, I think the idea of changing the painting behind you on a regular basis is really good. It just freshens up things. I'll get to the lights in a second, but I was watching the show, and the first night you almost fell asleep. I mean, you were just sort of nodding off a little bit. Then the second night that I watched it, you started talking about something with art, and you sort of got yourself in a corner where you were asking yourself a question which you didn't have the answer to. It was sort of in a box, and you didn't quite know how to get out of it. And I thought, I got to call Haim and get on the show, so at least there's a dialogue where you don't get bogged out with yourself. And I find the same thing. I mean, I'll start asking questions about what I do, and I don't always have the answers to what I do. To change the subject, I like the lighting that we have, and I think that what I would like to convey to the people that watch the show is that in the context of peace and tranquility, if I was sending out a message to our alleged world leaders who seem to be hell-bent on escalating this war into a nuclear war, ending everything that lives on Earth, is that the softer lighting, the tranquility of the lighting should be something that people pick up on, because what's going on this planet at the moment is a bunch of leaders that are out of control, don't seem to care anything about their people.
But what's new?
And it affects us in the sense that you and I don't want to reflect that in our art.
and if yes, then so what? That's
it's in the background.
I always think that if you were to put in place a vision or an attitude that you let's just say that you, not even starting, when the moment comes and you make a declaration to yourself or to people that that's what you're all about, that's who you are, that's what you do is all about, that's the character, that's the personality, that's the art, that's the capabilities, that's the talent, that's the willingness. You can quickly say no about an artist. If you see them half a dozen times, you would know if they work slow or fast, if they're prolific, if they're this, what's important to them, what you like about them, what not. You pretty much have an idea. But once you establish that, I think, even if you abandon it, or even if you find yourself saying I really ventured too far from it, when you realize that, it really is meaningless. There's no attempt to get back to normal or to get back to, like I said, I ventured too fast and too far away, and I need the proximity to home, the safety, the warmth, everything. But I'm telling you, that is, once you establish that, doesn't matter how far you think you travel, which is never really too far. There are habits, there are aspects of it that will never leave you, and that's what you want.
I have a question for you.
Thanks for listening.
I was listening. I heard all of it, and I have a question for you.
I appreciate that, by the way.
If you took all of the alleged great art of the last 100 years, and you took away the names, and you took away the publicity, and you took away the galleries that handled the artwork, and you simply looked at the artwork, period, not knowing who the artist was, not knowing what they had accomplished or whatever it was, and simply
Well,
looked
of
at
course,
the
it will be
painting,
less dramatic and less of an impact.
how much of that artwork would stand up on its
Most of
own?
it will look like it's, what are they thinking?
You would look at it and go, this is terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, you take away the mystique of what a gallery can do for the artist and the publicity that the artist gets and all the other things. You might say to yourself, who would be dumb enough to paint a Campbell soup can?
Yes, or black, all black, like.
Or a Reinhardt, Ed Reinhardt painting all black or all white. This is, this is like a room. You might look at a Magritte and say, this is insane. This
Well,
is
at least Magritte has a little.
Magritte at least has some
Stands,
insight.
he stands a chance to be accepted faster or easier than others.
Yeah, and
How
might
about
look-
seeing Hoffman on a 6 foot ladder, attentively painting a whole canvas black? Period.
Yeah, I mean,
And then he goes back, black over black over black over black, which, when you hear the thing, it's not fair to present it this way, because when you hear the whole story about how they went about to achieve whatever they achieved, you have to show at least the evolutionary process by way of even pointers. So it's not fair to.
I mean, you might look at a Picasso and say, I have 7th grade students that can do that. And,
Yeah.
On the other hand, you might look at a Dali and say, that's amazing that you can paint that. And I'm thinking of the one with the clock that is melting over the branch, and say, that's an incredible painting. The mind that was behind that conceived that, executed it, painted it, was just fascinating. But I think that if you took most of the artwork and you took away all of the surrounding PR, if you took the names off of things,
Okay, so you're repeating yourself now. So then what? Let's say we were to do that. What are we gaining out of it?
I think that as an artist, you as an artist, myself as an artist, you have to think of your artwork in the context that it has to stand by itself, and that you want it 10 years from now, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, for somebody to be able to, people to look at it and say, that's a really great painting. Not that the gallery or the PR or whatever it was made the painting a great painting. There's a real difference. If you look at a Rothko, there's nothing there. I mean, you and I could do a Rothko in about 15 minutes.
Yes, but what about the whole story? What about the story in its entirety?
I don't want to know about his background. I don't want to know about his
Yeah,
suicide. I don't want to know anything
But then
about
again,
it.
you cannot erase achievements and struggle and pain and whatever it is that was required for them to get to that
I
point.
disagree. I think
Because what about the conviction? For example, let's just say that if you were to do something really extremely pathetic for the sake of the argument, and knowing, then there would be just like, give me a break. Still, someone can tell you, but I did it on purpose. It's not like I suck so much, so the result is this. This was my plan, so I was successful. You failed to notice that I was successful in the project that I put in front of me to achieve. You remember? Okay, I'll remind you something. Remember those days where we used to go to the Golden Pear almost like 3-4 times a week
Right.
in the morning? You remember that one day I came with a throwaway camera and I told you that I'm in the process of shooting
Right.
images just as I walk, 24 exposures, 200. And I kept on telling you how I'm going to hold that camera and I'm just going to, whatever gestures that will take shots as my body is moving,
Right.
not to please the camera, but just because that's the way my body travels.
You were catching life.
Yes, but it's not catching life because it's not planned.
Right.
In that sense, it's planned
It's spontaneous.
to focus on the fact that I'm actually going to press that thing.
Right.
So it's the follow through. So let's say you take those 24 exposures, and you just create basic 4x6 or 6x8 prints, and then simultaneously you go get about 20 frames that is like $7 each. That's halfway decent. Then you kind of put them together, clean them a little bit, little titles. Somewhere, somehow, you get your wall, you put it there, you give it a name. What's the name? The name is what's the name. Okay? Here we go. You go to the paper, you'll tell them there's a show, they come, and they say, it's all the way from what's going on here and how genius or how incredible. I don't get it. I like it very much. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But it's something to be reckoned with. And when you take this attitude and repeat it, the only analogy I have is when you have a 4, 6, 8-year-old that's achieving a brushstroke, apropos what you taught me, but with pencils and pens, and then you realize, like I did the other day when I told my 8-year-old to be not, did Lorenzo do that or you did that? Because the 4-year-old and the 8-year-old showing pretty much same level of command. Not because he's better than her or she's better than him. It's because he's just elevated with his feelings, and he's just the only thing his body knows to do is to express these feelings without his mind being involved in giving orders. So as adults, I would say to myself, can we imitate that? We would be so fortunate if we could. If I can produce this kind of a painting, then I can really prevail at any kind of exposure of myself and my work, because it would be like,
But you can.
it shows signs.
You can.
Yeah, look, that big painting that you did, it doesn't matter if you did 100 of them or one of them, because one equals 100.
Right.
Everything is there.
Anything after that would be
you were
redundant.
smart. You put everything in there. So if you were never to paint another painting in your
I
life,
knew that when I finished that painting and signed it.
but
I
what
would never do
story
another
does it
painting
tell
like
us
that.
beyond what the painting itself portrays? What story does it tell us? It tells us about you. There is no way that this guy doesn't have to be pretty much perfect on many levels,
That
plus disciplines, plus patience, plus consideration, plus flexibility, plus consideration, plus mindfulness, and so many things. Everybody would know that. So what you're telling the world, this is something that you already know as far as what it takes to create that. I made my case.
doing that painting, the first thing I knew is that I wasn't going to do a second one. And
While you're doing it, you mean?
When I was doing it, I knew that this was the painting, that I was going to do that size. And it got to the point where when I got up and I went into the studio every day, I would look at the painting and I would go, it needs this. So I would add more things to it. I have a waterfall. What belongs with the waterfall? The fish jumping out of the water, which people don't see right away. And then suddenly you'll see somebody come into the show, to a show or wherever it's hanging, and they'll go, oh, look, there are fish jumping out of the water. And they didn't see it right away because there is so much going on that you have to spend time looking at the painting to really get the full aspect of everything that's going on in it. And that was my intent at the time, to go to the nth degree. I think that if you
But
took
there's
your...
also that which is important and that which is irrelevant. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we need to notice that, because at the end of the day, we cannot. It takes away from what we are capable of achieving and creating, if we were to dwell too much on that which is irrelevant.
When you mentioned your camera, there's a photographer, I don't know his name, and he takes photographs in subway cars. Just the way they are. Nothing staged, just he'll take hundreds of photographs, go through them, pick the one that has the right balance and the right movement and everything to it. Now, as an 8x10, it has no meaning. It doesn't do anything. But when it's enlarged to 8 feet by 10 feet, suddenly the transition from just a photograph of a subway car to this huge image takes on a whole other dimension, and that's part of his process. And suddenly you're brought into this. You're brought into the subway car, but you start to see things, movements, things that he caught intentionally, of somebody bending over this way and somebody leaning in this way. It was all, out of the hundreds of shots he took, the one that he made the print of, big, has a whole different dimension to it. And you're brought into it, and it has a tremendous amount of power. It captures life, captures movement, captures a whole host of things, because there's a whole variety of people on that subway car, from somebody sleeping on the bench to somebody leaning against a pole. It becomes alive. It doesn't become alive when it's a little print. The transition is, it has to be big, and that's part of his process. So if you take a painting like what you have behind you, and you suddenly have it, if you had it printed on canvas, and it was 4 feet across by 8 feet long, it becomes a whole other dimension.
And I come from there. I don't have this.
You paint big.
Yeah, I come
paint
from.
big.
I'm actually I'm coming from the big to the small rather than the.
The question is, why do both of us have a natural instinct to paint large? There are artists, if you go to the shows at the Watermill Museum, almost everybody in there that paints small. All the paintings are little paintings. I think I was in the show one year, and I had the biggest painting of all, and I had to get special permission to have it in there. Everybody was doing little 5x7s, 8x10s, that kind of thing, with a frame. Some of the paintings were really beautiful. They were exquisite. They were delicate. And the size enhanced that, the fact that it was a small gem. But what would happen if you took one of those paintings and blew it up into a huge image? You know, Brian Davis, I don't know if you know Brian Davis, he was one of the early artists. There were 3 artists in the early days of the poster business who were huge, I mean, worldwide huge successes. There was Brian Davis, Marcus Uzelewski, and Harvey Edwards. And those 3 artists did more business and sales with their artwork than anybody else. And each one represented a whole different genre. Brian Davis did florals that were incredible, absolutely incredible. Uzelewski did landscapes, but they were made out of lines, that just horizontal lines, that if you go to the Motor Vehicle Bureau, I don't know if they've changed it, but they used to be only Uzelewski's decorating the entire Motor Vehicle Bureau. Harvey did ballet, and some of his shots are absolutely classic shots. They'll be around 100 years from now. Okay?
And so, when we're going about to achieve the stroke that will please us enough to stay in the business, and I use the word business, with some reservations, then we'll be just fine. So because the thing is that any painter that was responsible for some kind of creation or invention or whatever it is, something that he is known uniquely for, should not prevent us from venturing into that territory, because especially if we know that we come with something already, and if we will adapt something, it will be so much will be added to it anyway after the fact. So it's not like we're passively entering something active and taking away from it and still remaining passive. We're active, before, during, and after. We're active. That's the thing. That's why I say that as much as I consider you one of the best painters that I know, when you're so passive, it's just the nature of the beast. You don't even know what it is that you're losing. It's not like I can sit here and tell you, oh, so, other than the obvious things, whatever. You know, even if your hand will be tired after 1 hour, if you go back at it after a week, it will be back to normal, so to speak. But still, the danger is in the not knowing what it takes away from you, not being passive for so long. But we can never experience a losing proposition when we enter active, coming from active towards active. Even if we were to collect the passive as we kind of enter that zone, whatever. So we want to achieve, I know, I speak we, you and I, because I know it's probably the things that will please me, if they were to happen, will definitely please you, even though you can be 10 times better than me, technically speaking. Looking at the canvas, weighing your options, working with the pigments, creating the pigments, being 10 times more.
I don't think you can compare.
No, but what I'm saying is just, yeah, I know. What I'm saying is that I say we because I know that creating the line, not for the sake of the line, for the sake of the idea that came to your head, and you didn't even spend too much time thinking, well, should I or shouldn't I? You just did it because that's the right approach, and then we'll see what's what. And like you say, we can always go over it. We can always make it disappear.
Right.
We need to remind ourselves we can do whatever we want. We can stop it. We can continue it. We can go faster, slower. We can do anything we wish. People don't realize how much power that means. So that means, let's just say you enter a zone where you're completely out of place. You know, and you feel, and you discover you're out of place completely.
Right.
But you know what? You can just say at some point, screw it. I'm out.
I've taken paintings that I thought were really good, gotten halfway through it, looked at it, and said, "Where's my gesso?" Gessoed over it and started again.
When you hear the voices, let's go back to this. When you see the vision of characters,
I see it in my head.
Yeah.
I have to see it in my head.
Okay, good.
Because I don't draw it.
But it comes.
But it's there. When I look at the white canvas, I don't see a white canvas. I see the painting, the finished painting.
Who is in the room that's not in the room? And what is in the room that's not in the room? So we know it's in the room. And in the room, there's also the canvas, the drum set, the blackboard.
There's a relationship between the canvas and me.
How do you give it just the right amount of respect, meaning, okay, you know what, you hear voices and you know you're not crazy because the voices are there because,
they're supposed to be there.
They're supposed to be there. Good, thank you. And at least you know that it's you, yourself, and you. Nobody has to know about anything, and it's nobody's business. Okay, you're there. So how do you come to terms? Because sometimes you don't want to just like have that present and evident, because there's too much to do than to pay attention to that. How would you acknowledge it? Only so it can be kind of put aside, and whenever you feel like you need some company, then you let it in again. And why am I saying it? Because you know as much as well as I do. This is important for the process of creativity.
There's an intimate relationship between the canvas/painting and yourself.
What is inspiration? Explain to me. How do you perceive? But really, I want an efficient answer.
The only way I have painted all my life, and it's the only process that works for me, I have to see the painting in my head finished. And my process is that because I don't draw things out, and I see a lot of artists with a pencil drawing what they're going to paint, and then they paint. I see it in my head. Once I see it in my head, it still leaves, it's like the abstract that's out there. I went from doing the landscapes.
You call that abstract?
I don't know what it is.
Don't be defensive, okay?
I don't know what it is, but it's certainly not a landscape.
So by not drawing the underneath skeleton, where do you find yourself?
I saw it. I saw the painting in my head and I knew what to do.
And if you need a point of reference, what would you use?
The only point of reference that I have, which is in every painting that I do, is that I see the painting before I ever touch the canvas.
Yeah, but once you commit and engage, when you're in the thick of it,
Then it takes on a life of its own.
you know what?
Then it takes on a life of its own. Then you can make changes. Once you have what you saw in your head down on the canvas, and the basics are all there, and the basic shapes are there, and the basic movement is there, then the painting takes on a life of its own, and you see things that you didn't see before in your head, and you can start to make changes. You can change color, you can change movements, and you'll look at something and you'll go, that doesn't work, so I'll repaint that. And that's part of the creative process, in that you have control over what you're doing. And the secret is to know when to stop. That's really important. And also to step back and look at the canvas and see, is this something that you didn't put in that you should have put in? If you're doing layers and that canvas has, most of my paintings are based upon the concept of layers. There's depth to everything. Even in the huge primitive in the living room has layers. It's not a primitive. It goes back, it goes up, it goes back. The painting that you like in the studio, the whole painting starts by looking through a window, which leads you to another window, which leads you down into a street, and you have to follow. I mean, the one thing that I was taught is that if a painting is static, if you look at a painting, anybody's painting, and you just focus on one thing, doesn't work. Your eye has to move around the canvas. You have to go all the way around it. It's like I'm looking at your painting behind you. There's movement to it. It brings me this way, it brings me back down this way. All of my paintings do that, so that you don't look at something and go right to the middle and get stuck there. You have to go to all four corners. You have to move into it. The layers take you in and out and in and out, and that's why there's often a little red line, which is my guidepost, that will take you, if you follow it, it goes behind a wall, and then it comes back out on the other side. And if people follow that, It gives them the dimensions.
But you're getting a little too graphic here, okay? I appreciate that, by the way, but what I'm trying to say, and then you wonder how come I fall asleep. Got you on this one. That's one cliche aspect that I'm willing to engage with in order to be able to proceed forward. You, yourself, and you. You know how cliche that is, that concept of you, yourself, and you. That kind of feeling of wholenessness and.
It's not a cliche. It's
for me it is. For me,
every artist sees something.
But I want to go back to basics.
Yeah.
I want to be able to send myself back to basics, because that's where you regroup, refresh. That's where things are just common practice. That's the love and the warmth and the security. Everything is there for me. So if I'm like, sometimes I don't have to prove myself in order to remain in the heat of the battlefield. Even though, because I know I'm going to prevail, I'm going to win, I'm going to cross, I said, no, you know what, I'll just pause, I'll go back home, go back to basics, reshape that which I already know and feel, just make sure that I polish it, make sure that maybe I gain some calories, and maybe I'll, replenish whatever is, even if it's not time to replenish. And then go back, and most probably that battlefield will not be there any longer, because it has a mind of its own. You can find yourself in the midst of the battlefield, apropos you, the canvas, because you're already engaged, and you cannot just turn around and leave. You can, but you wouldn't.
Right.
So at the end of the day, you want to say that you stayed and you prevailed and you did and that, and then eventually something happened. Something that you were happy with, something that is presentable, something that has kind of a totality to it, of like a happy ending, so to speak, something like that. So you want to experiment from all directions. You want to kind of succumb to most of the activity and the action, but in the same token, you want to be a leader in that sense. You want to make sure that, okay, you're going to put your 8 hours, by the way, which is kind of fiction almost, to put 8 hours in the studio. But at the end, you say,
8 hours is nothing. I mean, I can start painting.
it's
go
more
all
than
night,
45 minutes.
and I have no idea what time it is. But I think there's a rule that I live by, and the rule is very simple. Each painting that gets done has to be better than the previous painting.
That can be extremely meaningful and extremely meaningless at the same time. What
For
you
me,
just said.
it's really important. There's something from the previous painting that I'll look at it and I'll go, I'm really happy with it, but it's missing something.
So what's your definition of good and better? And the relationship between the two.
There's a sense that when I look at an earlier painting compared to the newest painting, the difference is that, using my landscapes, the clouds are far better. The landscape is far better.
But you're not describing what better is, because it's already good. You say it must be better at the end of the day because it's the following painting.
It's the color, it's the composition.
What about the color? What about the composition?
The color is changed.
It changed to become what?
A different palette.
What is different?
It has, because I work with metallics, the glow is different.
What glow? What's the nature of this glow? I cannot relate to it without you describing.
If you look at the painting in daylight, as the sun changes during the day, the painting changes during the day, because it
changes from what to what?
It'll be blue in the morning, and at night it's gold. It completely changes color.
And what does that mean? So what does that mean then?
It means that what I've done is I've accomplished what I want, because I want the painting to be a living thing. I want it to change. I don't want it static on the wall, so that when you look at it at 8 o'clock in the morning...
So because it changes light, so you're saying change means...
More than that. The whole cloud changes. Everything changes in it. It's a different painting at 6 o'clock at night when the sun
So why is it important to you that it will that it should change?
It's a living entity. To me.
How is it not a living entity as it is without the change, for that sake?
If it's just static.
Static meaning what?
Nothing moves.
But we already established that something moves all the time regardless, whether it's changing or not.
What moves is like if you take the big primitive, what moves is the viewer. The painting doesn't move. The painting is static. The waterfall is static. The trees are static. The school is static. Nothing moves.
So if nobody views it, so then it's passive. It's still, isn't it? That would be like a little...
It's a successful painting, but it doesn't have in it, it's a much earlier work, it doesn't have the transition that I went to, where it changes color, everything in it changes depending upon the light. So
the viewer is responsible for elevating the painting into its rightful greatness, no?
I've gotten...
Is that correct? Would that be a good statement?
More calls from people.
Yeah, but would that be an accurate statement, that the viewer is really, and not only that it is capable and it will, we're counting on him or her to do that?
I count on the viewer to have a certain amount of knowledge. As you and I would walk through the art shows that used to be in town in the tents.
Without describing it, what is it that they can give us? I mean, what is it that they can give us just like that, without any level of complexity, that we will find ourselves very thankful and very grateful?
What I found in those art shows,
I want to simplify it. That's why I'm asking.
a certain excitement.
Okay, good.
At looking at some, whether it's a photograph or a painting or a collage or whatever
Yeah.
it is, it's something that catches my attention, and I find it exciting. A, because it's different. B, because it's done really well and it's done professionally. And it's not just something that somebody tried to do and they were lucky to get one.
So if it makes you feel this way, then what happens is that you claiming that there is a friendship, a relationship that's forming, and you embark on a process where this is a new partnership. And so how would you explain to me the nature of the day after, so to speak? You got what you expected, and even more. Now you're finding yourself in the studio. How does it translate itself then?
I remember it. It's in my database of things that I've seen.
And that equals what? You standing in front of the canvas the day after.
Just as much excitement remembering it and saying, you know what, I saw this painting or whatever it was. It's irrelevant. It could be sculpture, it could be painting, collage. I saw this at a show, and I'm not going to forget it because it was something that got my attention, that I was really excited to see because it stood out from everything else that was around. I mean, so much of the work was mediocre at best. And here's this one creation that I looked at. It's like walking down the aisle, and all of a sudden you look and you go, wow, somebody did something that really works. It's got my attention. I look at it. All the criteria that we use for creating a successful work of art is in there.
Okay.
And it's different.
So then,
and it's exciting.
Is change always good?
No.
So describe to me then, the feeling of being left almost within the proximity of your demons, and that that at least for now you have to kind of deal with these demons, but still we know that we have. I mean, not in your case maybe, but we know we are facing the canvas. Whether it's 10 minutes, 10 minutes today. I mean, I can say that. I can say that sometimes today I spent only 10 minutes in front of my canvas, and today it can be 3.5 hours. But we know that for certainty, as certain as we can imagine. So, how does the modernistic aspect of it survives, because there's so much of modernism that forces its way and itself into our engagement? I feel it this way. I feel that I'm busy with something that I have in mind, and I'm decided to execute, and I'm in the midst of doing that, and then I realize that there's something that wants to pull my hand away from the surface and to consider a different color and to consider a different gesture, almost like a head game. Modernism is so available and so active and so present that if we were to pay more attention to the fact that maybe we should, no matter what style we speak, in the name of whichever style, that we need to interpret efficiently what modernism spells in your medium, i.e. painting, and start from there in order to meet the style that really has your name on it.
I'll ask you a simple question.
Thanks for listening, by the way.
And I heard everything. When you go and you paint, when you go into the studio and you paint, is your intention to do the same thing that you did with the previous painting and the previous painting and the previous painting and the previous painting? Or is your intention to do something different, to progress, to change something, to make it look different from what you've done before, because that's essential in order to grow. You can't keep
Correct.
doing the same thing over and over and over again, because it's redundant, and you reach a point where it just isn't going to get any better. It's just going to get boring.
Enough said. My answer is probably a lot thanks to you. I'm already 2-3 stages ahead of that.
Okay,
I
that's
already paid that
important.
price. I paid that price, and there's a huge price to be paid. Actually, being in that struggle, we never stop facing this struggle. It's just the level of intensity. Definitely, 2-3 years ago, I was really in the thick of it. Now, I know that change spells itself from within. Change itself. I don't seek it elsewhere. So that means if I have a canvas, I know the canvas knows that its days are numbered.
Right.
But okay, I did what I did. I'm going to sleep. The next day, the canvas knows it's doomed.
It's not.
It never recognizes itself once I'm done with every short or long session. Now, how you get there and why you would want to make it your business to get there is because if I was to occupy myself with that which is natural and normal to seek, which is change, breakthrough. That's how I was for many years. It's too much of a high price and painful price to pay, and so much energy draining factor. It serves as a factor that drains your energy unnecessarily. And then you realize that you cannot replenish energy. You cannot take that you lost by introducing new energy.
But you're not saying that you go into the studio and because it's easy to paint the same thing you painted the last time, so instead of making it difficult or making it a challenge, you paint the same basic subject matter, just different colors or different movement. You want to progress from what you did before into something that is different.
I say it's not even a factor. Yeah, I hear you what you're saying. It's not even a factor. I'm so far into the process where I'm so advanced from it because I made it my business. For example, if your house is messy, not dirty, but messy, clothes everywhere, but let's just say you have 4 kids, and it's not dirty, but here and the laundry and someone did that, and papers that they like to cut and all, it looks really messy. And you have an hour to decide whether you're going to go and weed your garden or tidy up the house. Or at least start with a portion of that 1 hour to tidy up the house. And you know that if you focus for half an hour, you will literally transform this house. And then you might have 20 minutes or half hour to go weed your garden. It's your choices. What's available, what is accessible, and you have to make decisions. And the decisions go according to actually, this is a friend from Jerusalem. Yuri, are you just calling me, and I'm here on doing the TV show, so maybe we can put you on the air with us. What do you think?
Yeah, we can do that for a few seconds.
Well, this is my friend Yuri Ben Shimon. He actually lives here on Long Island for at least 30 years, and now he's a tour guide in Jerusalem, and he's
All over Israel, not only in Jerusalem, all over.
From Jerusalem, all over. But I think that maybe you can tell us a few words about the state of mind of our small country there, with all the rich heritage of history and whatnot.
Well, it is 9 o'clock at night, and I'm listening to a great live album by Pet Matini on my new turntable. If you want to get a little bit of the mood here in Israel. But anyways, politics aside, things are fine here. Everything is great. If you choose to really have an outlook, a positive outlook on life. So for me, everything is gold, and and this is how I see my days here in Israel. I love what I do, showing the people around, mainly Americans from the States, and thank God that I made the move after so many years in New York, which was a wonderful time for me. Coming back to Israel and doing what I'm doing is really the best for me at this point. So I'm having a great time, and the weather is beautiful. And if somebody had in mind a dream, had a dream in mind to come and visit, by all means, on my end, all the support and all the positive meaning coming here is the best thing that you can do for those who never visited Israel, and for those who did came to visit here years ago. Come back again. Come and visit. Israel is great, and I'm having a ball.
Oh, and I think I had enough. I'm looking at you. I feel lightheaded. But hey, listen, while we're talking in about half an hour or so, I'll give you a call, or you give me a call.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate these wonderful words of yours. You're a very talented, knowledgeable individual, and it's joy. Even the crash courses that you gave me were meaningful. I still remember them with lots of joy and deliciousness.
Yeah, we were having a lot of fun talking Bible and history. And
Oh yes, and you're number one. And I have my guest here, Steve Romm. He would love to visit Israel, and he's a person that you would really appreciate and love to chat and interact with. He's a know-it-all, he's a troublemaker, but still.
He knows Lenore.
I can
Yeah.
deal with troublemakers. No problem.
Tell him Lenore.
Do you remember Lenore here? Do you remember Lenore? No.
I need to see the faces.
Long blonde hair.
A visual memory is going to be because names and stuff. At this point in life, things are kind of foggy.
But I'll spare you from the hassle to show you the face of my guest. You won't feel good afterwards. And I'm doing you a favor. I have to. Oh yes, I'm directly from here to my shrink.
I hope that he embraces your sense of humor.
Oh yes.
He knows you. He knows your sense of humor.
Well, he does things to me too.
And just tell him that I'm here to keep you awake.
Yeah, he's here to keep me awake because now
You guys are even.
the latest trend is that I fall asleep, so he's here to keep me awake. Halfway through the monologue, I fall asleep. So let's talk about half an hour or something.
Good to see you having fun. We'll talk later.
Okay, you got it. Hey, you're the best, Yuri. Yuri Ben Shimon from Israel. Bye. Isn't it great that we can see him?
It's amazing. I mean, I speak
like,
to
what
my
the
friend
heck?
in Australia
Unbelievable,
at night
unbelievable.
on Skype, and it's like he was next door.
Let me just make sure that we have enough. Yeah, we got 3 more minutes.
Okay.
Oh my God! So
I'm
what I was trying to say.
I'm going to ask myself a question, which is a question that you would ask. Why did I go from the last landscape that I did, which is the big one in the living room, the one that is off to the right, to an abstract, which is out hanging in the hall? Why did I suddenly
Because in
stop?
more ways than one, it's who you are.
I had done enough landscapes that I had reached the point when I looked at the last one that I did, I just felt like I was done. There wasn't
But
anything
even though
I
you
could
did
really
10, 1 out of 10 abstract, still, it doesn't mean that you're not an abstract expressionist. That's the way I see it, because, the abstract that you did puts to shame, in my eyes, even though I don't want to use the word puts to shame, but it's just as a form of speech. All the paintings that I saw, I see that's who you are. And in more ways than one, you can't even help yourself. You just find yourself doing it, which gives you the indication that maybe that's really who you are.
Well, I love doing abstracts. I mean, as I said,
And you do it well.
it's something that I think that if you're, what's the right term? We have 3 minutes. I can't describe it as
It's
3
two
minutes.
by now.
It's 2 minutes. If you're a real painter, it doesn't make any difference what the subject is you're painting. You can paint it. Da Vinci could have painted anything. If there was cubism at that time, he would have been the master at cubism. If there was abstract painting at that time, he would have been the master of abstract painting.
But if you get to wonder about it, then it's good to know that actually that's who you are, and vice versa. When you go to the landscape and all that, that's who you are. That's what we are all about. But I wanted to pretty much conclude and say first of all, thank you for showing up and being here with us. It is a Tuesday afternoon. February 21st, year 2023, here with the Hello Hello Show, and it's good to discuss these things that we can be serious and we can be introduce humor and but to still portray that level of seriousness, and the proof is in the pudding. That's what I said. The active through passive active. It's a no-brainer, really.
All I can say at this point is I am now at the point where I'm ready to go home and paint, which is going to blow your mind.
Good. And I welcome that, and I bless you for that, and we're going to be here
And
tomorrow.
I have to say, the abstract, having gone to the abstract, was because of you.
Well, you see, that's the best compliment you can give me. Really, I thank you for that.
And
That's
I mean it
very
sincerely.
nice. Very nice. Very nice. Thank you. So we're going to be here tomorrow as much as we were here yesterday, and as much as we're here this Tuesday afternoon, February 21st, year 2023, here with the Hello Hello Show. And my name is Haim Mizrahi. Again, thank you to our guest,
And
Stephen
I'll be back
Romm.
tomorrow.
Absolutely. This afternoon.